Hi there, queers and comrades. It is Jason Wyman, aka Queerly Complex. And it is Monday, which means that it is time for another Jason Reads. Jason Reads is a weekly series where I read the words and works of others who are helping me find my place in the chaos of this cosmos. And you know what? It is pretty chaotic these days, like everywhere, all of the time. Yes, that's why I didn't want to miss this week. Last week I was a little late, but this week I want to share something from Designs for the Pluriverse by Arturo Escobar. This book is really helping me right now find and create language around my art and social practice, as well as the services that I do with Tree of Change with Crystal Mason, one of my dear friends and comrades and my business partner. Which brings me to a quick announcement. This Thursday, we are closed for business at Thursdays Are for Queers and Comrades at 465 Collected. I am so sorry. Crystal and I will be at the African American Art and Culture Complex for the Emory Douglas In Our Lifetime tour and artist talk that will be happening. We are, through Tree of Change, for those that don't know, we provide facilitation, change management, and stakeholder engagement services for organizations, foundations, businesses, and other formations of individuals and groups. And we are doing the African American Art and Culture Complex's strategic planning process. We've been undergoing this process for a while, listening to stakeholders, having dinners, making art, hosting events, and now we have this tour coming up on Tuesday night for Black students and unions, and we're going to be doing some strategic planning engagement with folks. So that is why Thursdays will be closed this week. We will be back next week on the 23rd with Queer Art Club and Archive Club. So now that the announcement is done, let me dive into this book, which is incredibly helpful. And I'm going to be reading from a section on the transition design framework. The transition design framework constitutes a significant intervention into design discourse and education. At a moment when many design schools are feeling the pressure to adapt to the mounting ecological and social challenges of today's world, this is, of course, easier said than done in a field that, since the Bauhaus, has been so wedded to the making of unsustainable modern styles of living. The CMU Group's identification of an area of design research, education, and practice committed to radical social change in the face of structural unsustainability can thus be seen as the group's most courageous and provocative intervention, not only within the design field, but within the academy as a whole. And I just want to pause here and just say, I never graduated college. In fact, I was actually kicked out of college for being queer, so I have no love of the academy, but this is some really interesting framing around design for transition and kind of a liberatory design framework that I actually find incredibly helpful. Let me continue. The initiative to form a transition design track can be considered a particular attempt at reorienting design, perhaps parallel to but different from those cited in Chapter 1, such as those by John Thackara, Anthony Dunn, and Fiona Raby, and Pell N., Elizabeth Nilsson, and Richard Topgard. The group's transition design imagination, in fact, goes beyond the changes currently being implemented in the social sciences and humanities or within interdisciplinary fields such as global and environmental studies, at least in the Anglo-American Academy. In my view, most major universities are bowing to the pressures to train people to be allegedly successful in what is described, without much reflection, as an increasingly globalized and interconnected world. This means preparing individuals to compete in market economies, and many of these individuals will carry on the mandate of unsustainability and defuturing. Let us see then how this new area is being conceptualized. The framework is based on a heuristic model structured around 4 different and interrelated areas. See figure 5.1. That is the figure. Yes, I write all over my books. That's the figure right there. All right. And it has some unique features. First, it is a design approach oriented to longer time horizons and explicitly informed by visions of sustainable futures. The creation of visions of and for transitions is the cornerstone of the approach. This component of the framework is under development. It focuses on tools and methods for facilitating discussion about alternative futures, e.g., scenario development, forecasting, and speculative design, rather than on a full-blown strategy for the critical study and articulation of visions. It embraces some of the trends discussed in Chapter 1 and in the first part of the present chapter, such as the necessarily place-based character of much transition design work and design's relation to the transformation of everyday life. The visions dimensions also appeals explicitly to a few of the TDS already discussed, particularly the TTI and the Great Transition Initiative. Don't know those last two acronyms, don't really care. What I will say is that this is a lot of confirmation with the fact that one of the first things that Crystal and I do with our services is actually do a space for dreaming and listening, because we think that it is incredibly important to start and root our work in both dreaming and listening to ourselves and to one another and to what is being said around us. A unique feature of the framework is its explicit incorporation of theories of social change essential to design strategies for the transition. These are intended to instill in designers an always evolving attitude of critical learning about the world. One of the key theories espoused in the transition design track is living systems theory, a body of knowledge that explains the dynamics of self-organization, emergence, and resilience taking place within natural and social systems. See the recent tome by Freihof Capra and Pierluigi Luisi for an outstanding and comprehensive account of this theory. The body of thought is central to a number of TDS, e.g. those of Joanna Macy, Brian Goodwin, Erwin Laszlo, and the Great Transition Initiative. Although it remains relatively marginal within the life sciences and is practically unknown within established theories of social change, with few exceptions. Working within the holistic perspective of living systems theory, Gideon Kossoff, from the transitions design team at CMU, develops a relational conceptualization of the domains of everyday life in terms of nested structures: household, village, city, region, and planet, each with its own dynamics of self-organization around collaborative networks. The transition to a sustainable economy, Kossoff explains, quote, will require the reconstitution and reinvention of households, villages, neighborhoods, towns, cities, and regions everywhere on the planet as interdependent, nested, self-organized, participatory, and diversified wholes. This will essentially be the transition from counterfeit to authentic holism in everyday life. The result will be a decentralized and diversified structure of everyday life, which is in contrast to the centralized and increasingly homogenized structure that we have become accustomed to. It will embody the communion not just of people, but of people, their artifacts, and nature, and will come into being at multiple interrelated levels of scale, end quote. This conceptualization endows transition visions with a scholar imagination that avoids the conventional vertical hierarchy of scales, which inevitably gives too much weight to the global and too little to the local or the place-based. With their emphasis on relocalization and recommunalization, all transition initiatives aim to reverse this hierarchy. Thinking in terms of nested structures and networks provides the basis for a distributed understanding of agency. I'm going to stop there and just say, Crystal and I have named what we do Tree of Change. We first started with Queering Dreams, which was specifically about dreaming and listening. And then from dreaming and listening, what emerged was our Tree of Change model for change management and organizational transformation. And that is what we do and what we use. Through this, we have also developed something called our Culture Tending Commons, which is how do we facilitate and tend to the culture that we want to see within the formations that we have. We have also developed language called autonomous collective actions, talking about how we self-organize towards larger goals, both individually and within a variety of formations. And in order to do so, we have two articles up on our Culture Tending Commons blog, one which is about choosing power and one which is about naming power. One is a practice or a praxis of discernment, and the other is a praxis of being able to pick what kinds of formations of power that we want. If you would like to know more about the work that Crystal and I are doing, please go check out treeofchange.net. We have some case studies up there, we have quotes from our clients, and you can find out more about the services that we provide, including workshops / popular education and stakeholder engagement. Everything is at treeofchange.net. Again, my name is Jason Wyman. I also go by Queerly Complex, and you can find out more about me at queerlycomplex.com. That's all I got, and thank you for listening to Jason Reed's reading from Designs for the Pluriverse by Arturo Escobar. This was published in 2017, I believe. 2017. Ciao, y'all.